statements made by Prime Minister about, from the Lok Sabha Speaker as well. He spoke about some of the changes that India has undergone in terms of the parliamentary procedures and the manner in which the parliament functions. Most importantly, the role of social media in making the parliamentarians accountable, and it's brought them closer to people as well. We'll continue with this conversation, talk about the use of artificial intelligence today. It's become a necessary tool, but also India has adopted AI guidelines to ensure that we're able to balance between both the positives and the negatives of this technological tool. We'll delve deeper into that, but let's listen in first to some of the statements that were made at the inaugural session by the speakers present there, including Prime Minister Modi.
In a parliamentary democracy, your role is that of the speaker. Interestingly, the speaker does not get to speak much. Their job is listening to other speakers. And ensuring everybody gets a chance. One common thing about speakers is their patience. They handle even noisy and over-enthusiastic members with a smile. Friends, on this special occasion, I warmly welcome you. We are honored to have you with us today. Friends, जिस स्थान पर आप सभी बैठे हैं, वो भारत की डेमोक्रेटिक जर्नी का बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण स्थान है। गुलामी के आखिरी वर्षों में जब भारत की आजादी तय हो चुकी थी, उस समय इसी सेंट्रल हॉल में भारत के संविधान की रचना के लिए संविधान सभा की बैठकें हुई थी। भारत की आजादी के बाद 75 वर्षों तक ये इमारत भारत की संसद रही और इसी हॉल में भारत के भविष्य से जुड़े अनेक महत्वपूर्ण निर्णय, अनेक चर्चाएं हुई। अब लोकतंत्र को समर्पित इस स्थान को भारत ने संविधान सदन का नाम दिया है। कुछ समय पहले ही भारत के संविधान को लागू हुए 75 वर्ष हुए हैं। मैं इस संविधान सदन में आप सभी अतिथियों का आना भारत के लोकतंत्र के लिए बहुत विशेष है। साथियों, ये चौथा अवसर है जब कॉमनवेल्थ स्पीकर्स और प्रिसाइडिंग ऑफिसर्स की कॉन्फ्रेंस भारत में हो रही है। इस बार इस कॉन्फ्रेंस का मुख्य विषय इफेक्टिव डिलीवरी ऑफ पार्लियामेंट्री डेमोक्रेसी है। आप सभी जानते हैं कि जब भारत आजाद हुआ तो उस दौर में ये आशंका व्यक्त की गई थी कि इतनी डाइवर्सिटी में भारत में लोकतंत्र टिक नहीं पाएगा। लेकिन भारत ने इसी डाइवर्सिटी को डेमोक्रेसी की ताकत बना दिया। एक सबसे बड़ी आशंका ये भी थी कि अगर भारत में लोकतंत्र अगर जैसे तैसे टिक भी गया तो भारत किसी भी हालत में विकास नहीं कर पाएगा। लेकिन भारत ने साबित किया कि डेमोक्रेटिक इंस्टीट्यूशंस और डेमोक्रेटिक प्रोसेसेस डेमोक्रेसी के स्टेबिलिटी, स्पीड और स्केल तीनों देते हैं। भारत दुनिया की फास्टेस्ट ग्रोइंग मेजर इकोनॉमी है। आज भारत में यूपीआई दुनिया का सबसे बड़ा डिजिटल पेमेंट सिस्टम है। आज भारत दुनिया का सबसे बड़ा वैक्सीन प्रोड्यूसर है। आज भारत दुनिया का नंबर 2 स्टील प्रोड्यूसर है। आज भारत में दुनिया का तीसरा सबसे बड़ा स्टार्टअप इकोसिस्टम है। आज भारत दुनिया का तीसरा सबसे बड़ा एविएशन मार्केट है। आज भारत में दुनिया का चौथा सबसे बड़ा रेल नेटवर्क है। आज भारत में दुनिया का तीसरा सबसे बड़ा मेट्रो रेल नेटवर्क है। आज भारत दुनिया का सबसे बड़ा मिल्क प्रोड्यूसर है। आज भारत दुनिया का दूसरा सबसे बड़ा राइस प्रोड्यूसर है। फ्रेंड, भारत में डेमोक्रेसी का अर्थ लास्ट माइल डिलीवरी है। हम एक लोक कल्याण की भावना से हर व्यक्ति के लिए बिना किसी भेदभाव के काम कर रहे हैं और इसी लोक कल्याण की भावना के कारण बीते कुछ वर्षों में भारत में 25 करोड़ लोग गरीबी से बाहर निकले हैं। इन इंडिया डेमोक्रेसी डिलीवर्स। साथियों, भारत में डेमोक्रेसी इसलिए डिलीवर करती है क्योंकि हमारे देश में और भारत में देश की जनता ही हमारे लिए सर्वोपरि है। हमने उसकी एस्पिरेशंस को, जनता जनार्दन के सपनों को प्राथमिकता बनाया है। उसके रास्ते में कोई बाधा ना आए, इसके लिए प्रोसेस से लेकर टेक्नोलॉजी तक हर चीज को डेमोक्रेटाइज किया है। और ये डेमोक्रेटिक स्पिरिट हमारी रगों में, हमारे मन में है, हमारे संस्कार में है। मैं आपको एक उदाहरण देता हूं। कुछ साल पहले पूरा विश्व कोरोना की आपदा से जूझ रहा था। भारत में भी संकट कम नहीं था, लेकिन उन चुनौतियों के बीच भी भारत ने 150 से ज्यादा देशों को दवाइयां और वैक्सीन पहुंचाई।
जाहिर सी बात है, प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी ने जिस तरह से भारत की संसदीय लोकतांत्रिक यात्रा का वर्णन किया और ये बताया किस तरह भारत ने अपने आर्थिक सामाजिक स्तर पर प्रगति की है, जाहिर तौर पे भारत का जो लोकतंत्र है आज दुनिया के लिए एक मॉडल बन रहा है। लोकतंत्र ही बना है भारत की ग्रोथ इंजन का। दरअसल इस बात को प्रधानमंत्री जी ने खास तौर पर जोर दिया कि जो लोकतंत्र की जड़ें हैं वो भारत में इतनी मजबूत हैं कि भारत की सरकार जो भी योजना बनाती है वो समाज की अंतिम पंक्ति में जो व्यक्ति खड़ा है उस तक वो योजना पहुंचे और ये लोकतांत्रिक प्रक्रिया के माध्यम से हो। वो बात चाहे पंचायती राज की व्यवस्था की बात की जाए, क्योंकि हमारा 3 स्तरीय जो लोकतंत्र है वो मजबूत है। पंचायत, राज्यों के स्तर पर जो विधानमंडल है वो, और देश की संसद जो कानून बनाती है ताकि इस जनता को अधिकार मिले, कानून के जरिए उनका हक मिले, कर्तव्यों की बात भी की जाती है हमारे संविधान के जरिए। लेकिन एआई की बात हुई, इस सम्मेलन में जो फोकस है वो एआई और सोशल मीडिया को कैसे जवाबदेह बनाया जा सकता है जन कल्याण की दृष्टि से। अशोक जी, मैं जानना चाहता हूं कि एक बड़ा व्यापक इशू है ये और एक बड़ा परिवर्तन दुनिया में हो रहा है टेक्नोलॉजी के जरिए, और हमारे देश में भी ये देखने में आया है कि पिछले 1 दशक में किस तरह से सोशल मीडिया के जरिए, एआई के जरिए, टेक्नोलॉजी के माध्यम से जो जनप्रतिनिधि हैं वो जनता के साथ अब सीधे कनेक्ट कर रहे हैं। इस पहलू को आप कैसे देख रहे हैं?
जी, बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण ये सवाल है आपका। और देखिए चाहे वो एआई हो या सोशल मीडिया हो, तो मैं तो समझता हूं वो डबल एजेड स्वॉर्ड है। थैंक यू। डबल एजेड स्वॉर्ड है क्योंकि उसके फायदे बहुत हैं परंतु उसके नुकसान भी उतने ही हो सकते हैं। तो इसीलिए हमको अपने को फायदा तो उनसे लेना चाहिए परंतु उनसे बचाव भी अपना रखना चाहिए। इसीलिए मैं समझता हूं, और ये बिल्कुल ही नई पद्धतियां हैं, ये बिल्कुल नए ही प्लेटफॉर्म्स हैं, नए इंस्ट्रूमेंट्स हैं जिनको कि जो अभी आए हैं मार्केट में। तो ये तो प्रधानमंत्री ने कहा है, जो हम इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन तो मिस आउट कर गए क्योंकि तब हम कॉलोनाइज कंट्री थे, पर अब जो टेक्नोलॉजिकल रेवोल्यूशन है उसके हम बिल्कुल ही अग्रणी रहेंगे। तो हमने देखा है, चाहे वो एआई हो, सेमीकंडक्टर्स हो, सोशल मीडिया, उसमें बिल्कुल ही जो भी इन्वेस्टमेंट की जरूरत है वो हम करते हैं। तो सबसे पहले तो ये जो जवाबदेही है, अकाउंटेबिलिटी है, ट्रांसपेरेंसी है, उसमें तो इसका बहुत ही ज्यादा योगदान है। और दूसरी बात जो कि आज प्रधानमंत्री ने खुद इसमें कही, जो अब हमने एआई का प्रयोग करके जो भी यहां पर बहस होती है, जो भी कमेंट्री होती है, जो भी डॉक्यूमेंटेशन आती है उसमें हमने जो भी अपनी राज्य भाषाएं हैं उसमें अनुवाद करना हमने इसकी शुरुआत कर दी है एआई के द्वारा। और आपको याद होगा जब G20 भी यहां पर हुआ था तो तब भी जो भी आए थे, हेड ऑफ स्टेट आए थे, हेड ऑफ गवर्नमेंट आए थे, जो लीडर्स आए थे, उनको भी ऐसा वो दिया गया था जिससे कि वो एक जबान में बोलें तो दूसरी जबान में एकदम अनुवादित हो जाता था। तो इसीलिए भारत ने उसका बहुत ही फायदा उठाया है। और इसमें जैसे हम कहते हैं, जो सभी नागरिकों के पास ये पहुंचे, जो वहां पर क्या बहस हो रही है, क्या बातचीत हो रही है, उनको ये भी मौका मिलता है, जो हमारा जो रिप्रेजेंटेटिव वहां पर गए हैं, हमारे जो प्रतिनिधि हैं, वो हमारे लिए क्या काम कर रहे हैं। तो इसीलिए उनके भी ये होता है। और अपना जो अगर वो अपना मत देना चाहते हैं, कोई भी चीज बातचीत हो रही है, किसी भी चीज के ऊपर कुछ बहस हो रही है, तो वो उसमें अपना योगदान कर सकते हैं। तो मैं समझता हूं जो एआई की अभी आगे चलते हुए और बहुत ज्यादा उसके फायदे होने वाले हैं, केवल अनुवाद तक ये सीमित नहीं रहेगा, परंतु जैसे इंफॉर्मेशन आप जो भी किसी बारे में आप कुछ भी जानना चाहते हैं, बहुत जल्दी आपको वो सारी इंफॉर्मेशन प्राप्त होगी। और जैसे कहा जाता है, इंफॉर्मेशन हो या नॉलेज हो, ज्ञान हो, दैट इज पावर। और इसीलिए वो सशक्त करेगी, जो भी जनता है सभी को सशक्त करेगी, जो वो अच्छे भागीदार बन सके, उसमें अपना कंट्रीब्यूशन दे सके जो कुछ भी बातचीत हो रही है।
जी मनीष जी, आप कैसे देखते हैं इस पहलू को? क्योंकि हम इस दौर से गुजर रहे हैं जहां लोकतंत्र की हम बात कर रहे हैं, व्यवस्था की बात कर रहे हैं, आम आदमी तक योजनाएं पहुंचे, और इसमें जनप्रतिनिधि की भूमिका, संसद की भूमिका, और उसमें एआई और सोशल मीडिया की भूमिका, इसे आप कैसे देखते हैं?
नहीं, जैसे एम्बेसडर साहब ने बताया कि बहुत सारे फ़ायदे हैं एआई जिस तरह से यूज़ किया जा सकता है, कि चाहे वो पॉलिसी जो है कि अलग अलग क्षेत्रों में, क्योंकि अल्टीमेटली बात हो रही है डाइवर्सिटी की, तो इतना डाइवर्स पॉपुलेशन है भारत का, तो ये ज़रूरी है कि वो जो पॉलिसीज़ है, जो प्रोग्राम्स है, जो डिबेट्स है, डिस्कशंस पार्लियामेंट के, वो ऑलमोस्ट रियल टाइम में हर जगह डिसमिनेट हो रहे हैं। तो ये ज़रूर एआई का फ़ायदा है, लेकिन मुझे लगता है कि किसी भी डेमोक्रेसी के लिए आज की तारीख में एआई से एक खतरा भी है, और खतरा है वो डिसइंफॉर्मेशन। मुझे लगता है कि डिसइंफॉर्मेशन इतनी आ रही है, फेक न्यूज़ इतनी आ रही है, तो उस पर एक किस तरह से अंकुश लगाया जाए, किस तरह से उसका नियंत्रण किया जाए, मुझे लगता है कि इसको भी देखना ज़रूरी है, क्योंकि डिसइंफॉर्मेशन से मुझे लगता है कि सबसे बड़ा धोखा होता है डेमोक्रेटिक प्रणाली को, कि किस तरह से डेमोक्रेटिक इंस्टीट्यूशंस को ये नेगेटिवली अफेक्ट करता है, डेमोक्रेटिक लीडरशिप को किस तरह से ये टारगेट करता है। मुझे लगता है कि ये भी देखना ज़रूरी है कि फ़ायदे ज़रूर है, इसका मतलब ये नहीं कि आप एआई का मतलब यूज़ मत कीजिए, लेकिन कि जिस तरह से एक थ्रेट्स उभर रहे हैं, मुझे लगता है कि हम लोगों ने उस चीज़ को भी मतलब अनदेखा नहीं करना चाहिए, क्योंकि अल्टीमेटली जो डेमोक्रेसी का कोर है, इट इज़ रियली अबाउट रियलिटी, इट इज़ रियली अबाउट ट्रूथ। और अगर ट्रूथ एक तरह से मतलब उसको मैनिपुलेट करके आ रहा है, एआई के माध्यम से आ रहा है, और एआई के माध्यम से सिर्फ आपको पिक्चर्स, सिर्फ डेटा नहीं, आपको लिटरली वीडियोस आ रहे हैं, और आपको लगेगा कि अरे ये यही इंसान बोल रहा है, बट दोज आर ऑल फेक न्यूज़, फेक वीडियोस। कहीं पर राइट्स हो रहे हैं, कहीं पर वारदातें हो रही है, मतलब बहुत सारी चीज़ें। सोशल मीडिया एक तरह से एक पॉजिटिव भी है कि आप वो कर पा रहे हैं, लेकिन एक नेगेटिव ये भी है कि उस इंफॉर्मेशन से प्रभावित होकर सिटीजन्स अलग तरीके से उसको रिएक्ट करें। तो मुझे लगता है ये एक हम लोग को बैलेंस बनाना बहुत ज़रूरी है।
In fact, the focus of sessions at the 28th CSPOC is about sharing experiences on these shared challenges that democracies within the Commonwealth framework are facing with regard to these technological tools, especially artificial intelligence. Professor Roy, it's been spoken on the program earlier that in India we've been able to effectively make our democratic institutions of the people, for the people, by the people, because we've evolved with time. If we don't evolve, if we don't adapt to technology, we become redundant, we lose connect with the central focus, and which is in the context of democracy, the people of this country. So when artificial intelligence is being used because of its advantages, when it's helping in the outreach, helping connect better with citizens, it's not something that the parliament can also ignore. It has to be adapted in parliamentary procedures, in parliamentary functioning. But the key point here is how it should be integrated in a responsible manner with the parliamentary functioning. How do you think artificial intelligence can be used responsibly with regard to parliamentary procedures without compromising on aspects like privacy, on accountability, and so on? Professor, please unmute
Manish
yourself.
has said.
Yes.
Just a moment. Yes, am I audible to you
Yes.
now?
Yes, Professor, go ahead.
Okay. I agree. Let me put Manish's views precisely. One, the accuracy of the information. That's very important because there is a lot of disinformation or misinformation. Number two, translation, because of so much of diversities, there are problems of translations. That's communication, lack of communication. So artificial intelligence can be used for effective communication. The third is dissemination, accurate dissemination of informations. The fourth could be when in case of any misinformation, it could be checked immediately, not by coercive apparatus, misuse of coercive apparatus, by using artificial intelligence that could be checked. This disinformation, sometimes engineering the riots or violence, etc., etc. The fifth could be that what actually happens in the parliament that could be seen by millions or billions all across the world by using artificial intelligence. The sixth could be through social media platforms that we can see those debates could be recycled, could be so that right from the schools, the kids in the schools could
Good
be
evening,
taught.
sir. Happy New Year. I just realized that I have not spoken to you in the New Year, so I thought let me
जी
Oh, Mr. Bansal, apologies. We weren't informed that you've already joined. We'll let Professor complete his point and then we'll come to you. Please accept our apologies. Professor
No,
Roy,
I'm
please complete your point and then we'll go across to Mr. Bansal.
Almost I have completed my point, because many times, see, the artificial intelligence, can be used regarding the debates that happens in the parliament, and many times it's very fascinating. Those debates could be shown in the schools from the early stage, so that the democratic value that we have been discussing for an hour almost could be taught to, inculcated from the childhood in the schools and in the students' psyche, that may build up not only the generations but the civilizations that India has been talking about for the last couple of thousands of years. So here I stop.
Okay, Mr. Bansal, once again, before we proceed and before we get in your perspective, please accept our apology. But as we were discussing about the importance of CSPOC before you joined us, and we've been focusing on the central themes, most importantly, the use and impact of social media and artificial intelligence on the parliamentarians, and in terms of their outreach to the people who are the center of democracy. Tell us about how important first is a platform like a CSPOC at a time when there are so many complexities in the geopolitics that we are witnessing. Democratic institutions are backsliding, including in our neighborhood. We witnessed one thing that India has done effectively is, because of democratic values in our civilizational ethos, democracy in our country is not just thriving, it's delivering at scale, at speed, something that was underlined by Prime Minister as well in his speech. So first, your thoughts on the importance of CSPOC in the context of the global challenges and how it helps uphold democratic institutions. Can you hear me, sir? We'll try and reconnect with him. I think we've lost connection with him once again. But coming back to our discussion on the artificial intelligence and the challenges, it's a double-edged sword, as Ambassador said. It's something that we need for our outreach, in order for our parliamentary procedures to evolve with time. But also some of the challenges like deep fakes, like fake information, and especially in this age where we are seeing fake information fly thick and fast across various platforms. It's important that lawmakers use this technology, but with caution.
No, absolutely. I think that's a key challenge which was also talked about by me earlier and Professor Roy, that it's ultimately important that how this technology is harnessed, and exactly that is a lesson for not just India but for democracies. I mean, it's very important that democracies should also get a real sense of what AI means and how it can be harnessed for increasing public participation, for empowering citizens, but also look at the challenges where these sorts of technologies are in fact harming public sort of faith in democratic institutions. I think that's a key challenge for governments, for democracies in today's times.
जी बिल्कुल अशोक सज्जनहार जी, अगर बात हम राष्ट्रमंडल देशों का जो सम्मेलन हो रहा है उसकी करें तो इसमें बांग्लादेश का ना आना, पाकिस्तान का ना आना, मैं इस संदर्भ में जानना, क्योंकि हम लोकतंत्र की बात कर रहे हैं और भारत लोकतंत्र का जो संदेश देता है, जाहिर तौर पर हमारे जो पड़ोसी देश हैं उनमें लोकतंत्र की क्या स्थिति है। बांग्लादेश एक समय सही रास्ते पे चल रहा था, लोकतंत्र भटका और जो हालात हैं वो आपके सामने हैं। बांग्लादेश और पाकिस्तान की बात अगर मैं करूं इस लोकतांत्रिक व्यवस्था के संदर्भ में, उसको आप कैसे देखते हैं, क्योंकि उनका ना आना कहीं ना कहीं उनकी लोकतांत्रिक व्यवस्था पर भी एक सवाल खड़ा करता है।
जी आप बिल्कुल ठीक कह रहे हैं मनोज जी। बांग्लादेश के अगर हम पहले उदाहरण लिया जाए तो उसमें वहाँ अगस्त 2024 से, जब से शेख हसीना और उनके समय में वहाँ पर पार्लियामेंट इलेक्शंस हुए, 2009 में हुए, उसके बाद दो बारी और हुए, 2024 में हुए, परंतु फिर जनवरी 2024 में, परंतु फिर उसके बाद 5 अगस्त 2024 को उनकी सरकार को है उनको वहाँ से निकलना पड़ा, भागना पड़ा। भारत में उन्होंने आकर शरण ली और अब वहाँ पर कोई पार्लियामेंट नहीं है। तो अगर पार्लियामेंट नहीं है, स्पीकर कोई नहीं है, तो मतलब इतनी देर हो गई है, अभी तक वो पार्लियामेंट इलेक्शंस वहाँ पर वो नहीं कर पाए हैं। आपने नेपाल का नाम नहीं लिया, परंतु नेपाल में भी यही हालत है जेन जी की वहाँ पर, और वहाँ पर भी अभी इलेक्शंस होने वाले हैं। तो बांग्लादेश का तो नहीं आना इसी वजह से, क्योंकि वहाँ पर कोई ना तो अभी लोकतांत्रिक कोई प्रक्रिया वहाँ पर चल रही है, ना वहाँ पर कोई रिप्रेजेंटेटिव्स हैं, प्रतिनिधि हैं, तो कोई स्पीकर नहीं है, तो इसीलिए वहाँ पर नहीं आ रहे। अब जहाँ तक पाकिस्तान की बात है, तो पाकिस्तान के साथ, क्योंकि वो तो अपने संबंधों को भारत के साथ आतंकवाद के नज़रिए से देखता है, और इसीलिए इसका खामियाजा पाकिस्तान को सबसे ज़्यादा चुकाना पड़ रहा है। क्योंकि हम देख रहे हैं वहाँ पर कुछ समय ऐसा पहले था, करीब 20 साल पहले, जब भारत की अर्थव्यवस्था केवल 3 या 4 गुना थी पाकिस्तान के साथ। आज हमारी 11 बारी बढ़ी हुई अर्थव्यवस्था है, हमारी $4 ट्रिलियन है, उनकी $400 बिलियन से भी कम है। तो मतलब उनको, क्योंकि वहाँ पर ये कहा जाता है, क्योंकि सारी सत्ता, सारी जो पावर है, शक्ति है, वो वहाँ की आर्मी के हाथ में है। लोग कहते हैं जो हरेक देश के पास सेना होती है, परंतु पाकिस्तान में सेना के पास देश है, तो वो सारा उसी जो उसका दारोमदार चलता है, वो सेना के उस पर चलता है, जो वहाँ पर आर्मी चीफ होते हैं। और अभी तो ऐसा हुआ है जो वहाँ सर्वोपरि वो हो गए हैं, और उन्होंने एक नया ओहदा भी वहाँ पर निकाला है, चीफ ऑफ डिफेंस फोर्सेस, जिससे कि न केवल वो आर्मी के चीफ हैं, परंतु एयरफोर्स के भी चीफ हैं, उनके जो रॉकेट फोर्सेस हैं, नेवी के जो हैं, सभी जो भी हैं, उनके वो चीफ होकर बन गए। उनके विरुद्ध कोई केस भी नहीं चलाया जा सकता वहाँ के सुप्रीम कोर्ट में, न केवल जबकि वो शासन में है, परंतु जब शासन से निवृत्त हो जाते हैं तब भी केस उनके विरुद्ध नहीं चलाया जाता। तो देखिए वहाँ के हालात बहुत खराब हैं। आतंकवाद को, जिसे वो कहा जाए अपना एक इंस्ट्रूमेंट ऑफ फॉरेन पॉलिसी, भारत के विरुद्ध अगर वो उसको चलाने में, उसका प्रयोग करने में वो विश्वास रखते हैं। इसीलिए हमने देखा है आखिरी जब सार्क का सम्मेलन हुआ था, साउथ एशियन एसोसिएशन फॉर रीजनल कोऑपरेशन, 2014 में काठमांडू में हुआ था, 2016 में वहां पर होना था, अभी तक नहीं हो पाया, क्योंकि पाकिस्तान आतंकवाद का प्रयोग करता है, क्रॉस बॉर्डर टेररिज्म का प्रयोग करता है। अगर आप देखिएगा जो यूनाइटेड नेशंस में सिक्योरिटी काउंसिल की जो 1267 कमिटी है, जिसमें कि सभी दर्ज नाम हैं उन लोगों के जो कि आतंकवाद के लिए जिनको डेजिग्नेट किया गया है, आधे से ज्यादा उसमें पाकिस्तान के लोग हैं। आधे से ज्यादा अगर आप देखें कौन से संगठन हैं, वो पाकिस्तान के हैं। तो इसीलिए पाकिस्तान का तो जो जहां पर भी कोई आतंकी घटना होती है पूरे विश्व में, उसका आप एक सूत्र पाकिस्तान के साथ आप जोड़ लेते हैं।
Pakistan exports terror. India is known to export development and cooperation. Perhaps this event that India is hosting is a reflection of our commitment to, assuming a leadership role when it comes to aspects of development and sharing development cooperation with countries in the global south. Coming to a question on, the fact that something that Ambassador spoke about, backsliding of democracy, organized protests in parts of the world, including in our neighborhood, to overthrow an elected government, impose a dictatorship, and what they refer to as the Gen Z protests. In that context, the chairperson of the IPU did mention in her speech this morning, she spoke about how it's a shared challenge that democratic institutions have lost connect with people, and especially referring to the youth. That's not true in context of India, because our youth is more than connected with the lawmakers, but largely when you look at the global order and a number of democracies, you see that happening. The democratic institutions actually have not been able to stay connected with the aspirations of the youth. They're not able to meet their demands, they're not able to meet their expectations, and because of which we've seen the Gen Z protests taking place in several parts of the country. What do you think should be done at a global level because this event is being hosted by India. India is in a leadership position. What do you think is the solution to making that connect more visible and strengthen that outreach with the people of different countries? It cannot be a one size fit all solution, but at least in our neighborhood we've seen thriving democracies, but the elected governments have been toppled, and now look at the state of affairs. It started in Sri Lanka, then Nepal, Bangladesh. We've seen it in different parts of the world. So the shared challenge basically is you lose that connect with the people of your country, and that's where the trust in democratic institutions is eroding.
No, I think that's a very important point, and I think the real sort of solution one can proffer is really, following genuine democratic principles, ensuring genuine democratic participation. Number two, in terms of constitutional values, it's very important that constitutional values should not be followed only in letter but also spirit. So I think that is a very important point, and that is exactly this conference is all about, sharing those practices. And I think one of the major points which really causes these sorts of protests, and Iran, as we can see in Iran right now also, is really about development. And what is happening is, when the development doesn't reach the last mile, you are going to see such outpouring of anger on the streets. And I think that is where we have a different success story. And especially, obviously, it started in 1947. It is really about democratic stability, and it is really also democratic transfer of power, which Ambassador talked about earlier. So I think those very principles are extremely important, that in case you want to really flourish, and in fact the word which is being talked about, the term which is being talked about is resilient democracy. So I think if you want to bring in that element of resilience, it is very important to ensure that there is more participation. And I think very important point which Prime Minister Modi obviously talked about is that democracy needs to deliver. If democracy is not delivering growth, if it is not delivering development, if it is not developing inclusion, if it is not fostering inclusion, you are going to see that as a key challenge. And that is where I think the India story is really about, and very objectively looking at it. And that is why there is so much respect amongst the delegates who have come for this conference, that they have really seen from 2014 how, as I was talking earlier, that the programs and the policies and the development mantra, it is really about Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. So you talk about infrastructure, you talk about, and in fact one of the issues also which Prime Minister Modi talked about is issues of climate change, the issue of climate change, the issue of implementation of SDGs. So I think India is playing a very stellar role, and obviously is seen as a model for the global south in more ways than one.
Certainly. Before we proceed, let me welcome Mr. Alok Bansal, Executive Vice President, India Foundation. He's joining us virtually. Mr. Bansal, good evening. Welcome to the program. I hope you can hear me.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Before you joined us, we've had an extensive conversation with Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar, Dr. Manish Dabhare, Professor Himanshu Roy. We've spoken about the importance of CSPOC, some of the important interventions made by Prime Minister Modi in context of parliamentary diplomacy, India's commitment to strengthen parliamentary cooperation, and based on which he highlighted some of the inclusive efforts which take along the last person standing in the line into that discussion. He spoke about several things about which we've spoken. So since you've joined us a little late, let me once again start with your thoughts on the importance of CSPOC at a time when we are seeing a churn in the global geopolitics amid so many complexities. The importance of a platform like the CSPOC in strengthening parliamentary cooperation, of which India is in a leadership position, at least for the 28th edition that it is hosting.
See, India is not only the most populous country of the world, by virtue of its being most populous country of the world, it is also the largest democracy in the world. And it's one of the largest parliamentary democracies. In fact, for very long, it was believed that parliamentary democracies or democracies cannot succeed in developing countries. I think India has proved to the world that we are a thriving democracy. We have been a democracy for almost 8 decades now, and that shows India's resilience, India's democratic credentials. And I think getting all the parliamentarians, parliamentary presiding officers, speakers, etc., together on one forum allows the Commonwealth countries, which have the advantage of having a common language in which they can often converse, because most of them were colonized by Britain, and I think many of them do understand English to some extent. There is actually that common link language which works. These presiding officers can benefit from the experiences of one another, and I think that is a very, very important reason why this sort of conferences are essential, because this allows them to learn from one another and strengthen parliamentary democracies. And I think the future of parliamentary democracy to a very great extent depends on speakers and presiding officers who are participating in this conference.
That's right, Mr. Bansal. India has emerged as the leading voice of the global south. A lot of participating countries at the CSPOC represent the global south. How do you think it strengthens India's position, and it reaffirms our commitment to bridge the gap between the global south and the global north, and take into account the fact that a lot of these countries have been underrepresented at global platforms, and now it's upon India to raise their issues, talk about the challenges that these countries face, and also provide solutions?
See, that's what I was trying to say, that for a very long period of time, it was believed that global south is democracy and south or developing countries are not compatible. But India has proved the world. So as far as south is concerned, India is actually a shining beacon of democracy, when most of the developing countries have actually flipped. In our neighborhood itself, we have seen that democratic regimes have crumbled, and many places have quasi-authoritarian regimes or regimes which are actually non-representative, ruling over the masses. So I think India, as a shining beacon, which has not only been democratic but has also emerged as the fourth largest economy of the world, is actually an example worth emulating for the countries of the global south. And India is seen as a representative of global south, and India has been raising the voice of the global south that they should have adequate representation at all global forums, including United Nations, where I think the voice of the global south is largely unrepresented as far as the Security Council is concerned. So I think these are the issues which India has been projecting, and India's success is in a way the success of global south, and global south by and large looks up to India as a shining beacon, and I think they have a lot to emulate and learn from India.
That's true. That also reflects in the huge participation in terms of number that we are witnessing at the 28th CSPOC. The speaker did announce in the press conference that he held just ahead of the event that this is the most grand and the largest ever CSPOC in the history of the forum ever since it began in 1969 in terms of participation, because you have so many speakers and presiding officers of countries who are part of the Commonwealth, but also represent semi-autonomous parliaments. So it's important, and it comes at a time when the world is struggling. We are seeing protectionist policies by a lot of the developed countries. Countries are weaponizing technology. That is where India comes in with a different approach. Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam is what we believe in. The world is one family. Our best practices, because we've seen a technological revolution. Digital initiatives have been undertaken in the last decade or so to empower citizens, which has brought about this rampant transformation. Giving India the edge to share these best practices with countries that have been deprived of the fruits of any development all these years. So India not just trying to act as a bridge between the global south and the global north, but making sure that these countries of the global south, which were underrepresented all this while, for so many decades, are adequately represented. And if not, India will raise their voice effectively at these platforms. And that's why the key themes that have been brought to the table by India, we were talking about the role of social media, we were talking about the impact of artificial intelligence, at the same time some of the potential dangers of artificial intelligence, and how countries must navigate intelligently, responsibly, to adapt the advantages and keep the disadvantages at bay. especially in context of parliamentary procedures. That's where I'll bring in Ambassador once again. Ambassador, artificial intelligence is a double-edged sword. You said it's something that we have to use, but with a word of caution, especially in context of parliamentary functioning. How do you see India giving these countries a leaf out of its own experience that we've seen in the last few years in terms of adapting technology, trying to soak in the best and the positives, but keep at bay the disadvantages in terms of bringing in laws, bringing in guidelines to ensure that people are protected and there is a safeguard mechanism against all the threats and the dangers that persist?
No, absolutely. I think that really comes to because India's democracy is so developed, it is so mature, and in terms of we are able to, because we've been talking about whether it is social media or it is artificial intelligence, these are new technologies. So, we do not really at this moment even know what is going to be going forward, what is going to be the impact of this. So we have to move, as we are moving, we have to learn and we have to take preventive and precautionary measures against it. So I think as far as we are putting in place the laws that are required, the big players that are there, whether it is Meta, Facebook, Google, etc., and X, we are in touch with them whenever there are problems, that we are always able to be in touch with them so that they are able to take preventive actions. We have just seen in the case of Grok also, what were the problems that he faced and how that could be, because it is not only related to what happens within the parliament, it is a much broader issue. So, even as far as the society itself is concerned, how these challenges will come up and how we deal with it. So I think these are the sort of actions that we take in the overall, and this is also what Mr. Bansal was mentioning about, and we have discussed that earlier, that these are the best practices. So I think India, having had this experience and being in the forefront both of the technology as well as of the safeguards, the guardrails that we have to establish for ourselves. If you permit, Tina, what we were discussing earlier in terms of some of these Gen Z protests in our neighborhood, I'd just like to mention one word. I think Manish brought it out very well and very clearly that democracies in those countries which are not mature democracies, they are not able to deliver. So the youth is impatient, so they will rise up against it. But in addition to that, one aspect we have to be mindful of is the in terms of the deep state. Yes. Because there are many sort of institutions and organizations which ideologically are opposed to something that is happening in countries, and they wish to fish in troubled waters. You would remember that even in India, just before our elections in 2024, there were sort of big established financiers who had said that we are going to apportion $1 billion of fund so that a change can come about in India. I think it speaks volumes about the resilience of Indian democracy, that they did not get swayed by any of these machinations or initiatives that might have come. But in countries, for instance, in Bangladesh, there has been so much that has been said that it was not a purely organic sort of a protest that took place that brought about the downfall of Sheikh Hasina on the 5th of August. Even, the chief advisor of the interim government, Dr. Yunus, when he was in the United States in September of last year, he said that it was a meticulously planned operation. And he said it had not taken place suddenly, but it had been in the making for many months. So I think we need to be, democracies need to be mindful of such challenges and also share information and intelligence with each other, that take care of these things, that developments are taking place, because Sheikh Hasina had been able to develop Bangladesh in a very significant manner. It was being upgraded from a least developed country to a developing country, And so, you know, it was doing, per capita income was also growing. But suddenly all these things, all these issues, and you look at the result today when there is so much of mayhem, just not even 1 month to the elections, but there is a total lack of law and order, lack of stability on the streets of Bangladesh.
That's true.
जी अशोक जी, जैसा आपने कहा और इस जिस मुद्दे को उठाया था मैंने, क्योंकि बांग्लादेश और पाकिस्तान की बात इसलिए की थी क्योंकि आतंकवाद के चलते जो पाकिस्तान का हालत हुआ, जैसा आपने कहा, सेना मजबूत है, लोग कमजोर हैं, लोकतांत्रिक व्यवस्था कमजोर है। बांग्लादेश में अराजकता ने वहां की लोकतांत्रिक व्यवस्था को खासा नुकसान पहुंचाया है। ये दोनों उदाहरण दुनिया के सामने हैं। भारत ने लोकतांत्रिक व्यवस्था के जरिए देश के आम आदमी को मजबूत किया, अंतिम पायदान पर खड़े व्यक्ति तक अपनी योजनाओं को पहुंचाया, डिलीवरी सिस्टम को मजबूत किया और उसके चलते देश में जो लोकतंत्र है, जो लोकतांत्रिक संस्थाएं हैं, वो मजबूत हुई हैं। यह भारत का संदेश है पूरे विश्व के लिए जो प्रधानमंत्री हर मंच से देते हैं। आलोक बंसल जी, मैं आपसे जानना चाहता हूं, क्योंकि हम यह मानते हैं कि लोकतंत्र में जो मजबूत संस्थाएं होती हैं वो विकास की नींव रखती हैं। भारत की अगर आजादी से लेकर हम देखें जो संसदीय यात्रा हमारी है, उसमें जो हमारी चुनावी प्रक्रिया रही है, वो एक मजबूत संस्था के तौर पे हम कह सकते हैं। आप कैसे देखते हैं जो मजबूत लोकतांत्रिक संस्थाओं की बात प्रधानमंत्री जी ने की है?
देखिए, भारत का ये सौभाग्य रहा है कि हम स्वतंत्रता के बाद से हमने संस्थाओं को सुदृढ़ किया है। अगर आप हमारे पड़ोस में देखें, पाकिस्तान है जिसमें कोई संस्था जो है फौज को छोड़कर सुदृढ़ नहीं की गई, चाहे न्यायपालिका हो चाहे संसद हो। भारत में हमने जो है जो संसदीय परंपराएं हैं उनका पालन किया और समय के साथ साथ सारी जो कन्वेंशंस हैं उनका हमने पालन किया और इससे हमने संसदीय व्यवस्था को दिन प्रतिदिन और ज्यादा सुदृढ़ किया है। और इसीलिए आज समूचा विश्व और विशेषकर जो प्रगतिशील देश हैं वो हमारी तरफ देखते हैं, क्योंकि हम उनके लिए एक आशा का दीपक हैं, हम उनके लिए एक मापदंड हैं जिसके वो चाहते हैं कि वो भी हमको हमारा अनुकरण कर सकें और एक सफल समृद्ध और प्रजातांत्रिक राष्ट्र के रूप में उभर सकें। क्योंकि अधिकांश जो विकासशील देश हैं वहां पे प्रजातंत्र कभी ना कभी कहीं ना कहीं जो है दबाव में आया है और कई राष्ट्रों ने प्रजातंत्र की राह छोड़ी है। भारत के साथ अगर हम एक आपातकाल का एक छोटा सा हिस्सा छोड़ दें तो भारतीय संसदीय लोकतंत्र हमेशा सुदृढ़ रहा है और दिन प्रतिदिन सुदृढ़ होता चला गया है।
That's right. I think the biggest fact here that Ambassador Dr. Dabhare and Mr. Bansal have highlighted is that democracy has thrived in India because democracy has delivered. The governance models have been, in a manner which keep the citizens at the center of it, and because the citizens are happy, there is no discontent. When we talk about neighborhood, perhaps there was discontent. The democracy was not delivering enough to meet the aspirations of people, and because of which the discontent happened. There were mistrust in institutions, and the external forces could take advantage of that and organize protests. They were meticulously planned, and the elected governments were overthrown. That's the biggest strength that Indian democracy has shown. That's the resilience that all our panelists have highlighted, that it's important for democracy to keep evolving, meeting the aspirations of people, and most importantly delivering, keeping in line the expectations and aspirations of the people. So despite being the largest democracy, despite being the world's most populated country, that is where the momentum has been over the last decade, that every single aspiration, every single expectation the government has tried to meet by way of different policies, by way of different reformative measures, and it's resulted in significant transformation, about which we've spoken at length on the program. As we wrap up this conversation, we're at the fag end of the discussion. Ambassador, let me ask you a question on, if there's one expected outcome of the CSPOC, what do you think it's going to be in the wake of the key agenda items, in the manner in which the speeches were delivered at the highest level, and the manner in which the expectations of the global south is from India at this point in time? What is that one big expected outcome that you would like to
I think the tone, thank you very much for that question, Tina. I think the tone of this conference would have been set by the Prime Minister's address in the morning. to all the participants. And that is where the what will be the direction of the discussions over the 3 days, 14th yesterday, you know, when the standing committee met today and tomorrow. I think that is where it is going to be as to how can democracy deliver exactly what you said in terms of meeting the aspirations of the people. And the second is in terms of India emerging as, you know, a ray of hope as far as the global south, particularly the global south, because, you know, as far as the developed countries, because you do have Canadas, you do have UKs, you do have Australias, and some of the other countries which are developed countries. But by and large, the majority of them is developing countries. And the manner in which India has been able to raise the profile of the global south over the last 4-5 years, you know, 2023, within a few weeks of India taking over the presidency, you know, we had the first voice of the Global South Summit. More than 125 countries participated, and then all their concerns, anxieties, you would remember, you know, that was the time when it had the Russia-Ukraine conflict had started. Countries had really not been able to get out of the COVID-19, the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic. And under those circumstances, you know, this, what were the concerns, the debt diplomacy in terms of the shortage of fertilizer, shortage of energy, shortage of food grains. So all these challenges were there. And India had a conversation with all these countries. So many of them participated at the level of the head of state, head of government. Then after the leaders' declaration was adopted on the 9th of September, Prime Minister organized another, basically as a feedback, to tell all the countries as to how their concerns had been taken on board. And then in 2024, another voice of the point I'm making is that India has truly emerged not only by walking the talk in terms of, you know, delivering, in terms of doing what, but also raising the issues of the global south on every possible platform. So whether it is G7 or any of the other global organizations, India has been able. So I think this is the message that it will go through to the countries, that India, when it, as we're talking, when it develops, it is not only for its own benefit, but for the benefit of all countries.
Dr. Tabare, what is the biggest outcome that you would expect? It's important because whatever is discussed here, the speakers and presiding officers will take back, discuss in their countries, you know, they will share the experience that they have gained from an important platform like the CSPOC. And most importantly, because what Ambassador said, that it's a reaffirmation. The CSPOC comes as a platform which reaffirms India's commitment to strengthening global parliamentary cooperation. That's the message that we want every country to take back when they go from here. So one biggest outcome that you would like to see at the end of this important conference?
No, I think a very important sort of outcome which we all are going to see is the India story. The India's democratic story is going to different countries in the Commonwealth via this platform. And I think very important, it's a conversation. We all need to understand that it is not a one-way street. So even Prime Minister Modi, in fact, hinted to it that, you know, he has also been speaking in different parliaments, and the best practices he comes back and discusses with either the Rajya Sabha chairman or the Lok Sabha speaker. So I think it's a two-way conversation, and I think I mean, at this stage, I think it is very important that as India becomes increasingly prosperous economically and moves from being the fourth to the third largest economic power, that India story, that it is really about democracy, I think that message is really going out far and wide.
Sure.
Okay, Mr. Bansal, close the show for us.
See, when these people go back to their countries, they will tell and they will emulate a successful role model of a democratic nation which has progressed and shown to the world how a developing nation can continue with democratic traditions and progress and take our people out of poverty. And I think that is a very, very big message, because very often in developing countries, people tend to say that democracies are not suited for countries which are developing. I think they'll go and show how India has maintained its institutions and have nurtured them so that institution, conventions, etc. have grown over a period of time. And I think they will try and emulate what they learn here. And I think this is a very, very big thing at a time when globe at large seems to be seeing a move away from conventions and rule-based international order. I think these people will go back and tell that it is possible to progress within the framework of norms and rules, and how India not only prospers but also propagates Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, that is taking the whole world together. So I think what they will learn from here, they are going to emulate in their countries, and not only will they continue to pursue the democratic traditions, but would also like to collaborate with other countries to take the whole humanity out of together and develop the world at large.
Absolutely. With that, we'll have to wrap up this very insightful and engaging discussion that we've had with you, gentlemen. Thank you once again for joining us on this important conversation. It's a wrap from Manoj and me. But before we wrap up, you can also listen into Mr. Birla's speech that he made at the inaugural session. Speaker Birla is the chairperson of the 28th CSPOC, which is currently underway. Tomorrow is another day when key sessions will be held with the speakers, presiding officers and other delegates who are attending this important conference, after which we'll have another conversation with experts about the 2-day event and most importantly the big takeaways after the 2-day event. But for now, it's a wrap from me and Manoj. Thank you very much for your time.
राष्ट्रमंडल देशों के 28वें संसदीय सम्मेलन के उद्घाटन समारोह में भारत के इस ऐतिहासिक संविधान सदन में आईपीयू की प्रेसिडेंट, सीपीए के चेयरपर्सन, राष्ट्रमंडल देशों की संसदों के पीठासीन अधिकारीगण, भारत सरकार के माननीय मंत्रीगण, राज्य विधानमंडल के अध्यक्षगण, माननीय संसद सदस्यगण, सम्मानित अतिथियों, मैं आपका हार्दिक अभिनंदन स्वागत करता हूं। इस गरिमामय अवसर पर भारत के प्रधानमंत्री माननीय नरेंद्र मोदी जी की उपस्थिति हम सब के लिए विशेष गौरव का विषय है। आपके दूरदर्शी नेतृत्व में लाए जा रहे नए रिफॉर्म के कारण भारत विश्व की सबसे तेजी से बढ़ती हुई अर्थव्यवस्था बन रहा है। आपका नेतृत्व वैश्विक चुनौतियों का निर्णायक समाधान दे रहा है और आपके नेतृत्व के लिए दुनिया आपकी ओर देख रही है। दुनिया के सबसे बड़े लोकतंत्र, मदर ऑफ डेमोक्रेसी कहे जाने वाले भारत में लोकतांत्रिक संवाद, सहयोग और साझा मूल्यों को सुदृढ़ करने के उद्देश्य से आज हम यहाँ एकत्र हुए हैं, जहाँ हम संसदीय लोकतंत्र की सर्वोत्तम प्रथाओं, नई पहलों और अनुभव को साझा करेंगे। हमारी संसद की 7 दशकों से अधिक यात्रा में हमने जन केंद्रित नीतियों और कल्याणकारी कानूनों के निर्माण से लोकतंत्र को सशक्त किया है तथा हमारी निष्पक्ष निर्वाचन पद्धति ने भारत के प्रत्येक नागरिक की लोकतंत्र में भागीदारी सुनिश्चित की है। इससे लोकतंत्र के प्रति लोगों की आस्था बढ़ी है। संसद और सरकार के साझे प्रयासों से हमने कई अनावश्यक कानूनों को हटाया है, नए कल्याणकारी कानून बनाए, जनता की अपेक्षाओं के अनुसार नीतियां बनाई है। इसका परिणाम है कि आज हम विकसित और आत्मनिर्भर राष्ट्र के निर्माण के लक्ष्य की ओर मजबूती से बढ़ रहे हैं।